the stress and the anxiety really did impact my emotional levels and my energy. It taps you out.
I had pain with putting my hair up. I would just have headaches all the time.
I think the challenge is losing something like your legs is really what's next? What does my life look like from here on out?
And I had diabetic neuropathy running through my legs. It's a pain, but all the time.
Well, I don't know if they're new approaches or they're old approaches, but there are some basic things that people need to do for themselves. I'm not an alternative medicine practitioner. I've never been alternative. I've always believed that we need a complementary approach. We need surgery and we need some of these life-saving medicines. But what we really need to do is prevent disease in the first place. Not that long ago, the human body was driven by a more natural rhythm. There were times of activity and times of rest. Today, it seems we're always on. In our modern 24/7 society, we live in a world of near constant stimulation. We are bombarded by demands of life and work. We're tethered to electronic communication. For health and healing, the body needs to turn down the stimulation to rest, relax, and restore. This is the role of the vagus nerve, the master communicator of peace in the body.
I remember the Albert Einstein quote from 1934, where he said, "The future of medicine is the future of frequencies, and the future physician will be a master of both the chemistry and the physical side of medicine." And what he was referring to was electricity and electrical medicine. He recognized that cells in our body runs on electricity, and that he predicted that we would be spending a lot of effort understanding how electricity can affect health and disease. You know, I'm a typical Western doctor. I was a surgeon implanting devices to help people with chronic pain problems. And then we developed techniques to treat and stimulate the vagus nerve. This opened up a whole world for me of people who are interested in functional medicine, understanding the problem at its root cause, and the vagus nerve fits right into this model. The vagus nerve leaves your brainstem. It then comes down through the skull and enters the neck. It runs down, feeds off, and helps with phonation or ability to speak and vocalize. It then goes down and supplies the heart, the lungs, and even then goes down into the gastrointestinal tract, pops through the diaphragm, and then like a spider web, it just spreads out all over the organs of the body. This is where the information is gathered about what's going on in the body, and it sends signals up to the brain, and the brain can process this. The brain then sends the signals right back down and says, okay, we need to adjust. We're supposed to be rest, relax, and recover most of the time, and a very small percentage of the time be in this sympathetic overdrive. For example, if you see a saber-toothed tiger thousands and thousands of years ago, you need to know to run away quickly. But your body needs to rest, relax, and recover most of the time. Today, we're always in sympathetic overdrive.
There are so many benefits of gaining control of the workings of your autonomic nervous system. This has been the focus of Dr. Cambria Judd, Director of Functional Medicine at Hoag Healthcare in Orange County, California.
I am a medical director at a hospital where we have a functional medicine program. So my job is always to be looking for what's the latest, what interventions work the best, and what we can bring to the program for our patients. So I was at a conference and listening and reading a lot of literature about the vagus nerve and how if we can learn to augment or change the signals on that, we could help with this parasympathetic, sympathetic stress, rest response in the body. Pretty quickly, we started having some significant results, especially with our patients that had a lot of, gut issues.
I live in Georgetown, Texas. So my profession is sports psychology, and I've done applied sports psychology with competitive athletes throughout my career, college, Olympic, pro, but most of my career has been applying psychology to military performance within the U.S. Army. Yeah, you know, my career was rolling along, and I decided to settle down with a family, and it was a good time. Gave me the challenge of helping raise a few kids and 3 boys, and you know, it was a happy time. You know, relationships are hard, and we kind of hit some turbulence, and then there was an abrupt change, and just wasn't working out the way that I thought it would. And I found myself, you know, having a hard time sleeping, and my mind was just going overwhelmed, and just had, you know, for lack of a better term, just flare-ups of anxiety, if you will. So sort of like panic attacks. I think the bottom for me, you know, was realizing that my brain wasn't just locking on and focusing like it normally would. And more often than not, it was, you know, not being able to shut it down. I was able to meet Dr. Cambria Judd through my dietitian.
When I first met John, he came in to see me because he was having some weight gain that he was concerned about. He had some gastrointestinal symptoms that he was having, and also had some recent heart labs come up that he was concerned about. You know, most of the time people don't come in and say, I need help with my stress and anxiety. They're coming in with symptoms, physical symptoms, whether, you know, it's fatigue, insomnia, they can't sleep. Gut issues is huge.
Yeah, so I had what I describe as panic attacks when I would lose control of my thinking, and then I'm very, very aware of my body, particularly my heart. So you'd have heart racing, or, you know, just spinning thoughts, overthinking, and couldn't necessarily control those. You're just out of control.
Stress and anxiety absolutely leads to inflammation. Cortisol is our stress hormone in our body. It's that fight, flight, freeze, hide. When it's really high, we should only be in that state in an acute crisis. We're running out of a burning building. It is a cortisol is a glucocorticoid, which is a family of hormones of the body that basically are sugar rescuers. So they tell the liver, make sugar. And sugar we know is inflammatory. Most people know that sugar is inflammatory now. So when you're constantly pushing cortisol because you're stressed, and you're telling the liver to make more sugar because it's the fastest form of energy, you turn out to start living in a state of constant inflammation.
Inflammation is incredibly important. It allows the body to respond to an injury or an infection. But inflammation, if left unchecked, can be actually very dangerous. The body has a number of ways to dampen this inflammation. One of them is the vagus nerve. Signals are sent from an organ to the brain via the vagus. The brain then responds with signals down to the organ to turn off inflammation. All of this happens automatically, but we're learning that we can enhance this process with vagus nerve stimulation.
I were working, and I did go through a divorce. And that was about the time that, you know, stress and chaos and uncertainty really peaked for me. My nutritionist at the time was like, well, let's reach out to the doctor and, you know, get you on some kind of drug. So when we reached out to Dr. Judd, she said, absolutely not. We're not just gonna give you a drug to calm down, you know, symptoms. Let's go at the root of things.
You know, it's hard in that position as a doctor, especially when someone's not sleeping. You really want to get them sleeping because things can go downhill quickly. And someone had made the recommendation, maybe we just give them a little Xanax. And that would do it. That's for sure. It would work. And it's tempting sometimes, but I thought, he's worked so hard, the last thing we could do is get this guy, body be dependent on Xanax. So I said, no, we have to do something different.
So Dr. Judd said, why don't we just get you using the vagus nerve stimulation device and see how that works. And so she talked me through how it works. So I just followed the regimen, and it was twice a day, 2 times in the morning as soon as I woke up, 2 times before bedtime. And I don't know how fast it took root, but I'd say within a couple of weeks, I was finding it easier to go to sleep. I was finding myself sleeping through the night. So yeah, I think I used the device pretty religiously for maybe 4 months, and really found myself calmed down and so forth. And then from there, it's just if there ever was like a really chaotic or stressful event and I found myself feeling just a twinge of those panic attacks or anything coming back, I would dive in and use it again for, a week just to calm things down. Really feeling that calmness, that peace.
I think that John's story really is a great example of how stress affects all of us. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we should be able to handle more than we do, and we have this shame if we are struggling. But I think this is something that we're all in together. And so I want to help. I want patients that I care about to be happier, healthier, and richer in all ways.
Today we have several ways to stimulate the vagus nerve for health and healing. They are the natural ways, implantable vagus nerve stimulators, and non-invasive stimulators that are placed at the ear or the neck. Now, these can be used at home. Let's explore how these methods work. It's often said that deep breathing is first aid for stress. Deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing the production of stress hormones. It lowers heart rate and blood pressure. It improves oxygen flow and helps with mental clarity. It can provide better emotional regulation. Unlike many of the other organ functions that are powered by the vagus, we do have voluntary control over our breathing. Throughout time, civilizations around the world have crafted practices and rituals that get people to slow down and connect more deeply with themselves and others. Meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, deep body work are all examples of using the power of the breath and the simplicity of focus to stimulate the vagus nerve. While it's not as practical or easily accessible as deep breathing, immersion in cold water is gaining in popularity and helping to provide people with an experience that ties back to these ancient roots. The diving response is partly controlled by the nerves around the nose and the face that send signals via the vagus to calm the body down. So short term, you can get some benefit from just immersing your face in cold water. And then acupuncture has been around for centuries. Many of the points that are used in acupuncture are points that stimulate the vagus nerve. Integrative-oriented physicians from all disciplines are beginning to incorporate these complementary practices into their therapies. For some people, incorporating these modalities provides that extra stimulus to help heal their bodies. A number of these rituals celebrate the power of natural herbs. The elaborate tea ceremony in Japan is one example. Another ritual that has become increasingly popular, and especially in parts of Latin America, is the cacao ceremony. It is a facilitated session that combines the comfort of community and the reinforcement of values such as gratitude, all while stimulating the parasympathetic vagus nerve with good chocolate. There are other natural vagus nerve hacks. Gargling and singing both engage a small branch of the vagus nerve in the throat. Ear pulling gently stimulates another small branch. But these methods pale in comparison to what we can achieve with electrical stimulation. There are a number of devices that stimulate the vagus and other nerves around the ear. These fall into the category of non-invasive auricular vagus nerve stimulators. Research is now underway exploring implanting devices around the ear.
I live in Wounded Knee, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and I am Oglala Lakota Sioux. Living and working on my reservation as a police officer for, the past 27 years or so. I've been and responded to hundreds of calls of diabetic emergencies on my reservation. There are all kinds of people in my lives with diabetes. My mother, my brother, my sister, myself, aunts, uncles, what grandparents I have left. The diabetic rate on my reservation is somewhere around 800 times higher than the national average. Back when I found out I was the first diabetic, I went in because my vision was bad. I thought it was just needing glasses because everybody in my family needed glasses. And they said my eyes were fine. They checked my blood sugar, and my blood sugar was a 263. Now, normal people, everyday people that walk around, normal blood sugars between 70 and 110. And I'm at a 263. And I had diabetic neuropathy running through my legs. It's a pain that's like an itchy, tingly kind of discomfort, like your foot falls asleep and then you move your leg to wake it up and you get that ugly, tingly, burning feeling because your foot's coming back to life after having fell asleep, but all the time. When I first became diabetic, you go in, they take your sugar and they give you a pill and say, here, try this. Yeah, it's just pill after pill until they can get you regulated and keep it at a certain level. I had reached that level and thought I was at a normalcy until they just started steadily rising until I was maxed out on every pill they could give me. At which point a device was introduced to our tribe, a tribal council, and it dealt with the vagus nerve.
So these are, technically they are an implant. We place electrodes onto the nerves in the ear, and we surgically implant them for a period of 20 days. And then we take it off after 20 days. What's remarkable about this is that the pain relief and glucose control appears to last for out to 90 days, or in some cases out to 220 days. So we really have to spend some effort understanding why that is, and then confirming that it is.
To bringing it down a week later, I was waking up at 220 blood sugar. 4 days later, I was at 190. 2 weeks later, I'm looking at 163 in the morning. And then at the end of the 30 days, my blood sugar I was running 97, 93 every morning. And it was awesome. I mean, my body, I haven't felt that good in years.
Inflammation is incredibly powerful and impacts many diseases, including diabetes. It affects the ability for the cells to take up glucose, and it affects some cells, their ability to produce insulin. The vagus nerve stimulation can mitigate that inflammation and decrease the chance of developing diabetes and potentially even, shall I say, lower glucose levels and possibly lead towards new treatment strategies for diabetes.
I had pain in my feet, I had pain in my legs and my hips, and it was like, gone. I have not one tingle, not one nothing, and sleeping full nights is amazing.
This data is so good that if it turns out to be true, this is going to revolutionize how we think about medicine. This is not just a typical vagus nerve stimulator. They're activating the whole trigeminal cervical complex, so it's a different strategy.
Perhaps the most dramatic, sudden, and often unpredictable sign of nervous system overload is the experience of a migraine. It's sort of like the body says, enough, I've had it, I'm gonna shut you down for a while. Millions of people around the globe are affected by migraine headaches. We're learning that vagus nerve stimulation can help.
I took a lot of things for granted. I was an athlete in college. I was really used to having like a busy lifestyle, very rigorous athletic training. And then it was as though over a few years, everything changed. When I first started getting migraines, I think I didn't even know that they were migraines. I realized I probably should have known because I was a neurology resident, but I think it kind of crept up on me. I was just having light and sound sensitivity. I had pain with putting my hair up. I would just have headaches all the time, but it took a while for me to realize that I was having chronic migraine. I oftentimes have a lot of cognitive dysfunction where I feel like I can't find the right word, or I feel like really nauseous during a headache. And so I think it's different things that can really spur like a bad episode. I've struggled to get off my couch, and I've struggled to do even light exercise sometimes because it can trigger migraine. So there's definitely been those periods in my life where migraine has turned my life upside down. Some of the initial visits that I had with doctors for my migraine really didn't yield much, and I think it wasn't until I saw a headache specialist that I started to get care that was really targeted for migraine and started to improve my symptoms. So Neda was a mentor of mine at Stanford. She taught me a lot of what I know about headache medicine, but she was also a really important advocate for my own care.
Lisa, Dr. Smirnoff, I've known for quite some time now because she was actually a headache medicine fellow at Stanford when I was on faculty there in the Department of Neurology. So she was a wonderful clinician, but also was suffering with chronic migraine. What brings migraine on isn't entirely understood. It may just be genetics. It may just be a genetic predisposition and a brain that's hyperexcitable. But some people have noticed certain factors that will trigger a migraine attack for them. And the most common ones we see are stress, also changes in hormones, menstrual cycles for women, many other things. Some foods can be triggers for patients. Bright lights can be triggers. There's a wide spectrum for each patient. With Lisa, like many people with chronic migraine, they've tried many treatment options, many different preventive treatment options. And she was currently on Botox for chronic migraine. She was also on one of the new CGRP agents for migraine prevention. And then, she was still getting pretty frequent attacks and some debilitating attacks. And that's when we discussed starting something like non-invasive vagal nerve stimulation for both prevention of her attacks and also to be used for acute attacks.
At some point in all this, I wanted to start a family with my husband, and it was difficult because some of the migraine medication that I was on was very helpful, but unfortunately, they were all contraindicated or considered not to be safe during pregnancy. So when I discontinued the medication that I was on, migraine became much worse for me again. And this is really where vagal nerve stimulation came in. The device provided me a lot of additional help and support when I couldn't take the medication that was really helping me before. So I used an external vagal nerve stimulator that's applied to the neck with electrodes, and so that was really helpful for my migraines.
What got me interested in the vagus nerve is, I'm very interested in the nervous system as a whole. And, there are lots of nerves that are heavily involved. And the one that I think is most interesting is the vagus nerve, because that connects the brain to the gut. And those are two very important, vital areas for not only migraine, but overall brain health.
When I was in medical school, we just didn't realize that the brain and the gut were connected so much. But I feel like we're starting to really learn how much the brain actually talks to the gut and the gut talks back. The vagus nerve, I would say, is the epicenter of that brain-gut connection. So the bacteria that we have that lives in our gut is our microbiome. And a healthy bacteria in your gut allows our immune system to be balanced, our brain to be happy and healthy. A healthy microbiome is driven by a healthy vagus nerve stimulation.
In this sense, the vagus nerve plays a big role in pain modulation and in inflammation. So with a device that's stimulating that nerve, that's where we know that we can help in terms of the pain modulation and decreasing things like inflammation.
In addition to improving the headaches, it also improved how I was feeling about them at the time, since I wasn't able to take medication that had generally been very useful for me. I think that had caused a lot of stress and anxiety, and having a tool to use instead did make me feel a lot more comfortable and feel like I was in control of my care.
While it's not as practical or easily accessible as deep breathing, cold plunges are gaining in popularity. The body's reaction is based on what is known as the diving reflex. It's an ancient holdover from 25 million years ago when land-based forerunners of oxygen-breathing mammals like the dolphins and the whales returned to the sea. In order to conserve both oxygen and body heat, heart rate slows and blood flow gets shunted from the skin to the vital organs. Noted psychologist Dr. Lindsay Bura explains this phenomenon and how she is bringing ocean therapy to her patients.
With freediving, we are activating the vagus nerve through a couple of different ways. One, we're breathing very slowly, the diaphragmatic breathing that starts to lower our heart rate. So we activate our vagus nerve to do that. The other thing that happens specifically with freediving is that we get exposed to the coolness of the water and the pressure that the water applies on our body. Both of these pathways activate the vagus nerve, which activates our parasympathetic nervous system and creates a relaxation response underwater that allows us to be more efficient at holding our breath. I did a lot of my training with the military and with veterans working on combat trauma and helping people stay healthy and get over what they were dealing with so that they could get back to their life.
Yeah, I served with the United States Marine Corps as an 0351 assaultman in the infantry. Yeah, I lost my legs to an IED blast in Helmand Providence, Afghanistan in August of 2012. It was a pressure plate IED, which is an improvised explosive device, and that resulted in the loss of both my legs above the knee. We were on an 8-hour foot patrol, clearing a position. We were on our way back. Squad of Marines went to the left of a path. I went to the right. When you're over there, you take the path of most resistance, because that means the people haven't been there, or it's less likely that people have been there. Next thing I know, I'm just kind of flying through the air. There's dust everywhere. Don't really know what happened. I kind of look down, see it, but really just a moment of pure chaos. Luckily, I had a great team with me that reacted very quickly and saved my life when my life probably should have ended that day. I think the challenge is losing something like your legs is really what's next. What does my life look like from here on out? Will I be able to work a normal job, have a family, be around friends and do the things I love that are active? Those are the question marks are the scariest part of going through something, I think, traumatic. I definitely think I have some level of PTSD. I think anyone that goes through something like a limb loss or anything traumatic, you're gonna have some level of PTSD. So Semper Fi Fund America's Fund is a nonprofit that supports injured veterans. They've done a ton for me. They reached out, said, we've got this trip, free diving in the Keys. And I said, that's awesome. Please let me go.
With PTSD, or the effects of trauma, you essentially have a hijacked nervous system. And this nervous system is more sensitive to things that cause stress. With freediving, we get to practice stepping into controlled stress so that in real time, somebody is changing their relationship with their brain and their nervous system through activating the vagus nerve, through breath and that experience. I don't care who you are, but if you start holding your breath under the water, your brainstem and your limbic system will react, so you will feel those alarm bells. So instead of feeling disempowered through some of the trauma that they went through, they now can have this experience to remember that they're actually empowered in the face of stress.
Yeah, I think it helps with PTSD in a big way. It's a sense of freedom. And for me, that was my fear, is that I wouldn't be able to do the things that I wanted to do and that I used to do. So being out in the water, you feel at such a more level playing field, because you're floating around like everyone else is floating around. So yeah, it absolutely helps with PTSD.
It's no secret that the U.S. military wants to get the best from its soldiers. They want them to be focused, to concentrate, to make fewer errors, to sustain performance for longer. They've turned to harnessing the power of the vagus nerve.
Vagus nerve stimulation isn't just for recovery, it's also boosting human performance, and the U.S. Air Force is leading the way. The Air Force has conducted well-designed studies showing that vagus nerve stimulation helps drone pilots make fewer errors and fight fatigue. Pilots are better able to distinguish, for example, between a school bus and a tank. With vagus nerve stimulation, F-16 pilots learn to land planes faster. And what's most fascinating, the Department of Defense has shown it helps soldiers learn and retain foreign languages more quickly. This improved performance was demonstrated for up to 90 days. Based on extensive research, the Air Force developed their own device called TAC-STIM, which is widely used to stimulate the vagus nerve at the neck. Most of us won't be piloting drones or F-16s, but we all face stressful situations. The ability to focus, boost mood, and reduce fatigue can help us better navigate life and work.
It is so exciting to be working with the Vagus Nerve Society because we draw upon physicians and clinicians and researchers from around the world who represent every scientific component and discipline of medicine.
In the 1970s, I became interested in working with people going through crisis situations. I became interested in going into war zones when I saw how well our training was working here in the United States. And the question came to my mind, can this same approach, can it be effective in some of the darkest places on the planet? And I saw the total devastation that had come, how traumatized everybody was, and I realized at that point that the time to work was not after the war was over, but during the war. And that began my journey of working during wars. Whether you're a combatant or a civilian, it's overwhelming. It is a life or death situation, and you're confronted with your own mortality, or the possibility of your own mortality, and the possible death of people you love, whether they're your buddies in combat or they're your family in a civilian situation, every day. So there's anxiety, there's difficulty concentrating, there's difficulty sleeping. There's all of the consequences of having an ongoing fight or flight response. So you can't sit still, you can't focus, you're anxious all the time. You may be drinking to quiet the anxiety. You're worried about the future, and you don't know if there's going to be anyone left or anything left for you to relate to. So it's a situation of total uncertainty. When we start our sessions, our training sessions or our group sessions, we would begin with the breathing techniques, with slow, deep, soft belly breathing, where we focus on the breath coming in through the nose and out through the mouth, and on the feeling of softening in our belly and relaxing in our bodies. So the first technique that we teach when we're training other people, when we're working with a group of people who've been traumatized, is slow, deep breathing, which is the most direct, the easiest way to activate the vagus nerve. And after a few minutes, 80 to 90% of people experience the benefits of that activated vagus nerve. Heart rate goes down, blood pressure goes down, muscle tension goes down, fear and anger decrease, and our capacity to think clearly is enhanced, and to be more self-aware and to be more compassionate. All this comes from activating the vagus nerve with slow, deep breathing. By the end of our 9 days of training, and we study this, and we have these evaluations available, people say, I have hope again, or I'm starting to sleep at night, or I'm not so angry, or yes, I'm still worried about my husband, but it's not interfering with how I'm doing my work or how I'm relating to other people. The sense is that this is a rebirth for the people in the war zone, and that they have found the tools that enable them to come into balance, as well as the capacity to help other people.
I've seen vagus nerve stimulation change people's lives, from kids with abdominal pains that can't be treated with medications, to addiction disorders, to severe migraines. This is a real phenomenon that is actually working to help many, many people across the globe.
And if you're interested in non-invasive treatments or devices, to talk to your doctor about that, because there are lots of options out there for treatment.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do in medicine, but I definitely think it's something I'm ready to tackle, for sure. It's needed.
There is no magic bullet to enter a world of wellness. And as you've seen from the stories of people on their healing journeys, there's a process of looking at one's life and habits, making incremental change, and then seeking out a professional who can take an integrative approach to providing guidance. For millions of people worldwide, this approach involves harnessing the power of the vagus nerve for health and healing.